Welcome to the Pridatect Privacy Insider podcast, a podcast dedicated to data protection in the UK, where in each episode we talk to different specialists in various sectors to learn about their experiences, best practices, and things they implement in their business life to comply with data protection laws. I'm Charles Matty Trevitt, the UK lead of Pridatect, and I have a background in marketing and data protection advisory from various companies, but most recently through Pridatect, a platform that helps companies with the growing challenges related to privacy and data protection compliance. Today I have the pleasure of being able to speak with Shaun Wilson, Senior Compliance Manager at Tesco Mobile. With many years of experience, I'm sure Shaun will be an interesting guest for our listeners, and we're delighted that he's joining us for this episode. So thank you for coming along, Shaun. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, so with that said, I think it's best if we jump into the content here. So just as a little bit of an introduction, can you tell us about your experience and how you got into data protection?
Yeah, I guess it's a similar journey to probably a lot of your former guests. So it was a boyhood dream of mine to become a DPO for Tesco Mobile. It's something I kind of fallen into along the way of my compliance journey. So about 8 years ago, I worked for the Financial Conduct Authority. I was a senior associate working on consumer credit, regulating firms, making sure they had the right authorizations and the right business models to be able to work within the UK. Then from that, I went over to work for O2. So I jumped the fence to then work for the O2 to help them get their compliance proposition in place, help them update some stuff that way as well. On that journey as well, when I was in the compliance team, it was coming into 2017, and we're going to bring in new GDPR rules within the company. Actually, this piqued my interest that this GDPR could be the way forward. It could be a change from the compliance role I've had previously. So I got involved with the GDPR project over at O2 and went really well. And from there was a vacancy over at Tesco Mobile. And Tesco Mobile, quite interestingly, are a joint venture between O2 and Tesco. So I had a connection over at Tesco Mobile. This is role available, and looked into it and applied for it, and was lucky enough to get an interview and get the role. That's how I ended up here today.
Yeah, I do think a lot of stories are quite similar. You're right, where it's not the goal from the beginning, but people will fall into it and then maybe find parts that interest them and develop it a bit more, right?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I found with the role itself, I don't know if you find the same thing, but it's never the same week twice. You always got
100%.
you got different conflicts to resolve. You got different issues to put in, or you got different kind of projects to lead on. So that's one of the kind of thrills of a role is that it's never the same week twice, which I love.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm on the advisory side, so I guess that, but even more so with all different clients. But it really is interesting because each company will have kind of unique challenges, right, in terms of data protection, GDPR, and whatnot.
Exactly.
But that's great. So into the questions. Obviously, data protection, something that comes up for me is engagement. How do you engage companies on the subject of data protection? Because obviously that's one of the big questions.
It's probably the ultimate question. How do you make data protection or GDPR? How do you make it sexy? Because it's not the sexy topic, you know. When you try to engage staff, it's one of the. It's almost a barrier to learning, understanding why it's so important to us as a company and to us as an industry, and also customers' data and information. So for me, it's around yearly comms with the business, making sure they understand what data protection is, make sure they understand why it's so important, why it's so relevant, and making sure they understand the regulators behind the ICO. Why they take it so seriously, because the fines involved for breaches is just astronomical for a business like ours. Also ensuring that I'm involved with key leads within the business, so making sure that whether there's a new marketing project, whether there's a new product being released, that I'm involved with them, so we can do an enhanced privacy impact assessment just to make sure what data is being involved. And because I've been in the role now for over 3 years, all the key leads understand that before we can launch a project, we must engage with DPO to make sure, one, understand what data is involved within this product or campaign, and make sure we limit any kind of harm to Tesco Mobile's brand, and also limit any kind of impact on customer data as well. So it's making sure we're engaging with the colleagues, key leads and the exec, someone from the top as well, make sure everyone's engaged in it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to get ahead of all the new projects, right? You got to so you have to be aware of what all of the other departments are doing,
Yeah,
basically, which is
exactly,
a part of the job that I guess most people wouldn't expect, maybe.
exactly right. Yeah,
So in terms of engagement, something that is in line with that is training, right?
yeah.
So, in your experience, what is GDPR training? What's the best way to approach it? How would you manage employee training, or have you touched it before?
Yeah, actually, you're talking to the right person because actually I oversee all the training for Tesco Mobile head office. So when you're a new starter at Tesco Mobile, within the first 7 days, you have to undertake and complete all of our computer-based training. So we have about 9 courses you have to kind of undertake and complete within the 7 days. One of them is the GDPR course. It's actually been quite a roadmap to get to where we are now, a comfortable place. Because back in 2017, GDPR was just coming out, and at the time we took a decision to get like a training program, lift off the shelf and put out to the colleagues. Here you go. We have to be compliant. Do this training course. And when I first started, I took that course, and it was the hardest course I've ever taken in my life. Even I
Yeah,
failed it, to be fair, the first trial on, because it's just literally it's just so off the shelf. It didn't kind of cater for audience Tesco Mobile with telco's industry, but it's just so generic, so bland, and it got really negative feedback from our colleagues. So over the last year and a half, I took like a project to update all of our training courses, especially GDPR, and just make it more accessible, more interactive, and make it fun. And by doing that, we're able to get like a lot more engagement, a lot more positive feedback from our colleagues. Um, they now come back and say, look, they enjoy doing it on a because we renew it on a yearly basis. So they come back in, undertake it. Whereas previously it was like pulling teeth to get people to do the CBT. You chase people up. When now people like wanting to come. Oh yeah, I've done my CBT, Shaun. It's so great, thanks. And that's the kind of feedback you want. So as well as as a DPO, as compliance function, you're kind of there to enforce the rules. But it's also about listening to your colleagues and the employees to make sure they're comfortable with the learning material. 'Cause ultimately, if they're not comfortable with it, they're not learning from it and taking away the key topics that are actually GDPR enforces as well.
yeah, I agree. I do think the training is incredibly linked to the engagement
Yeah,
because I mean you know the thing if some employee gets you know training and it's the most boring thing, they're not gonna want to engage with this in any other aspect of their job, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I've been in previous companies where people it's just a tick boxing exercise. You do it, you go away, you don't get it for a couple of years. But I have to say to the credit to O2 especially and to Tesco Mobile, we look at it as a way of engaging with our staff, take feedback on, make improvements where we can do, just to make sure one they're engaged and two they actually are learning what we wanted to learn from it as well.
yeah, that's great. It really is a learning process.
Yeah,
So we're gonna go in a different direction here. We're going to look at your kind of past experience. I guess this is like you were just saying. You had the O2 as well.
mm.
How do you think data protection is handled differently across companies, and how can that affect your job? Or do you think it's quite uniform?
That's a good question. I think companies are evolving since 2018. Before 2018, data protection was seen as a light touch, I guess, for most businesses. It wasn't really thought of as a major thing to have enforced. But I think due to the ICO bringing in data protection 2018 guidelines, a lot of companies now are, understanding the importance of not only data itself, but also customers' data. So I can only think of the journey I've taken from the FCA to O2 now to Tesco Mobile. Whereas at the FCA, we were handling a lot of business information, and I think back in that day, looking back, it wasn't always kept in the most secure way at the time. There's a lot of paper-based information here, paper-based there, put in a filing cabinet. But then since 2018, you now understand that that sort of information has to be kept, lock and key on the laptop somewhere. Has to be kind of protocols behind it. Has to be password protected and so forth. And I think as companies evolving, they're becoming more and more aware is that back in the day you could get away with paper-based records and stuff like that, whereas now, especially Tesco Mobile and O2, we are fully engaged that we have to make sure that this information is stored in the correct way and having that as also that data retention policy in place as well. That once you no longer need the information, why are you still storing it? Get rid of it. If you don't need it, why you keep hold of it? And a lot of companies, I think, have the mindset of, well, we'll have it in case we need it, but if you don't need it, just get rid of it.
Yeah, it's not adding any value to have these things piling up in servers or even in filing cabinets,
Yeah,
which some companies I'm sure are still doing, but hopefully we're moving away from that, as you said.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think as well as you're saying, that I think with the ICO bringing in 2018 regulations in place, a lot of companies now are aware of that. The old school way of keeping things in filing cabinets and paper-based stuff is now, hopefully, a thing of the past going forward. It is now more computer-based with those kind of protocols behind it and password protection as well.
yeah, as they highlighted the importance of technical organizational security measures. I guess the people with the filing cabinets went, we can't have a password on on this
So,
cabinet, Yeah,
yeah, maybe a lock and key, but even that I can get into it, can't I? At some point.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But that's great. And then, so in terms of this kind of sensitive data, maybe it's quite sensitive in nature, the things you may be dealing with at Tesco. What measures, not obviously specifically, but what kind of things would you have in place to avoid running risks? I guess one would be secure digitization of data.
yeah.
Anything
So
else?
yeah, so I guess for Tesco Mobile, some of the key risks we have is we hold a lot of customer data, as you can imagine.
Mm.
Addresses, date of birth, of telephone numbers, and we're susceptible to forces trying to get hold of that as well. So it's making sure we're always ahead of the game. It's not resting on our laurels and waiting to see if we get a serious breach. We have to always be proactive rather than reactive to certain situations. So what we do is we undertake quarterly risk assessments on our GDPR compliance program. So on a quarterly basis, it might be something like reviewing our PIA templates. Is it still fit for purpose? Looking at our security information, is that still where it should be? And we have to respond to the ICO, quite regularly as well. Are our comms to the ICO, are they as robust as they should be? Are we giving the right information they need as well when we report information? It's just looking at our processes and policies. So it's just on a quarterly basis, checking different parts of the business. So as you get to end of year, you've made sure on a yearly basis you've checked all of your GDPR compliance monitoring program just to make sure that everything you have in place is not only fit for purpose but is as robust as possible as well. And that's what we've done that's what we've done since I've joined the business.
Yeah, and I guess that process of constant review is just going to improve over and over again, right?
Yeah,
Until
I guess just by when you're reviewing on an annual basis, you can kind of see it's been a year before, what enhancements can be made, what we've seen in the business, which you can now implement to your way of working to make things, enhance things or processes within your business as well. 'Cause I take a lot of key learnings for what I see online from different seminars, different talks, and also fellow professionals in the industry as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's interesting, actually. All the different, because now, I guess now there are a lot of resources available to data protection professionals,
Yeah,
which is great. Which is great because I guess back in the day, a lot less things like webinars and things like that. You'd have to go to events, right? So
that's it exactly.
really good stuff. So now we're going to get into challenges a little bit, which I guess data protection comes with its challenges. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is the biggest challenge you've faced in your work with regard to privacy issues or data protection?
Um, I guess the biggest challenge I would have seen is making sure I'm getting the right engagement from my colleagues. It's just making sure that, again, I think I said it previously, this is when we kind of releasing any kind of proposition, making sure they're aware of the importance of sending the right message out to our customer base. Also making sure we're handling any colleague data as well. So we have a head office here as well where we have information around colleagues and stuff like that, because we're also a joint venture between Tesco and O2. So we have different customer data sets from Telefonica, so O2 and Tesco. So it's making sure we're engaging that in the most compliant way. So it's making sure that people who handle that information understand parameters of when you can access that information and when to give it out. So I think one of the key journeys I've been on in the last year or so is making sure we have a robust colleague subject access request as well, because it's quite easy to have that customer one and engage it and do it properly, but when a colleague asks for information, are we going to the right areas to get information from them? So a key challenge for me was, where do we go to get information for someone who falls under the Tesco brand or someone who falls under the O2 brand? So it's just making sure that we align our policies, and I think it's a pretty big challenge is align the policy, because we're a joint venture. It's been one of our challenges.
Yeah, I guess that comes to kind of access control at that point, right? Because it's very easy. Your colleague asks, "Oh, can I get a look at that?" For they need it for something, and easy to say, "Yeah, sure, take a look." But really, that's not great.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great answer. We haven't had that before. I think that's really interesting. The next challenge question I have is regarding the importance of data protection. So it's kind of like engagement, but generally people will say how they see it being generated in the organization. So what do you think? Like a top down kind of coming from the leadership approach, or?
Yeah. So we have, as you can imagine, with the telcos industry, we have data sets across the business, regarding customer base, financial remuneration, all that information. And I think it's just important that we engage with our colleagues who work in those departments to make sure they understand the importance of that information, like our tech leads, business strategy leads, make sure they understand the importance of that data and how important it is to make sure it's securely placed as well. So I've done a few seminars with certain departments to make sure they understand that when this information comes in, how are we keeping it secure? Okay, once this customer's left the business, how are we then disposing of this information? So again, it goes back to that retention of information. If we have something, first of all, why do we have it? And secondly, how long do we need to have it for as well? So I guess it's just been a key learning to make sure that data protection in all departments is seen as paramount as well. So it's an interesting one for me, because I'm also an FCA compliance manager at Tesco Mobile, so I'm looking at a customer experience of things, but also another side, how we're keeping the data safe, which for me is sometimes a battle. Like how do you have a great customer experience? How you give them the best possible experience, but also how we're keeping the data safe. And it's a great challenge as well to have. And when I go to meetings within the business, it's making sure we have those kind of two key things whenever I'm in a meeting.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like a bit of a tightrope walk, trying to achieve both. But I guess when you achieve it, it's very satisfying.
That's it.
And then, kind of in the same line, how easy do you find it to enforce various guidelines and things across departments? Because sometimes that can be tricky.
Yeah. I'm actually, I think I'm quite fortunate and quite lucky to work in a workplace where regulation is taken very seriously. So we, as a team, we present to our exec on a monthly basis. So we present to our CEO, CFO on a monthly basis around compliance issues, whether it be FCA or data protection, give updates, and we have the buy-in from the CEO, CFO that if anything needs to be escalated, they will back our corner. Having that tone from the top is so invaluable for a compliance team to have, because I don't know if you worked in departments where the CFO or the top business person doesn't take it seriously, you're fighting an uphill battle. But where I work now, straight away, anything we ask for, 9 out of 10 times we're going to get it, because they understand, one, how important it is to the business from a financial regulation point of view, but also a customer experience as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. From what I've seen, if the leadership are not on board in terms of compliance, it will make your life as the compliance officer or whichever role you have quite miserable. It's great to have all departments being happy to accept help, but if it's not being really supported and pushed, it can be quite tricky, huh?
Yeah. No, I can't stress enough just how focused our exec team are on the key issues around compliance and data protection, how seriously they take it. And this makes my job easier, that when I go into the meeting with them, not find an uphill battle, they're ready to listen, they're engaged, and whatever we need, they put action plans with us as well.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess we spoke about the user experience there a little bit. So in your experience, are the customers or users concerned or interested in how their data is being handled in the kind of telco, or are they not overly interested?
Shaun, like I can say they are very interested in their data within the telco industry, without a doubt. Yes, on a monthly basis, we get quite a few subject access requests where customers, are definitely aware of what they can and can't request from us at Tesco Mobile. So they want to know about their call records, call notes, data usage. Are just the key, kind of the top three things we see from customers who want to know about their information. I think since GDPR came into force in 2018, as a don't think it's just the telco industry. I just think as a country, we just understand now. Okay, I know what I can request. I know where I need to get it for, and when they because I'm obviously a DPO for Tesco Mobile, a lot of information will be sent to me. Oh, you're the DPO. I want this, and this, and I want it within 30 days. So they know exactly what they want. They know the time scales to get it right, and that's great to see because the information there is their information, and they should be accessing it. If they want it, they're entitled to it as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. I do think it's great that people are more knowledgeable about what's happening with their data nowadays because I mean, it has a lot of value, and
Yeah,
it seems like the way we're going, it's going to have more value, right?
without a doubt.
So that's great news. Um, the next question I have here is talking about sensitive data again.
Yeah,
So you said that you do touch a lot of it because there'll be obviously phone numbers, for example.
yeah.
Um, outside of kind of really strict technical measures, is there anything you have to keep in mind because of that? Or is it just more kind of pushing compliance and being aware? Um,
Yeah, I think protecting data protect data, especially within our sector, is of paramount importance. For a lot of people, your mobile phone is your life. You got your messages on there. You got your apps, online banking's on there as well. We all use it for like day-to-day and mundane tasks. So within our industry, we can be susceptible to someone coming in, defrauding us, and hacking someone's mobile phone. And when you hack someone's mobile phone, you can then go away and do most things on their behalf, like again defrauding them and taking out money from their account and stuff like that. So we have to ensure we're always reviewing our practices to protect our customers. That means reviewing all of our policies on an annual basis, data protection policy, which is available on our Tesco Mobile website, which customers can access to make sure they understand how and why we use their information, what kind of things we have in place to protect them. I think it's also ensuring that we're ahead of the game. As I said before, is that we have within Tesco Mobile, I have monthly catch-up sessions with our fraud team and infosec team, and we have a monthly session to say, look, this is going on within the industry, within the company. Here's what's going on, and here's what we can do to fix it. So we're always on the front foot. This is like I see a lot of companies with those three sections: data protection, fraud, infosec, are disjointed. But for me, it's a paramount importance that we're kind of three pieces of a triangle. If one part is missing, the other two are going to fall down. So by having those monthly sessions, we can, we can horizon scan what's coming up in the business, what could affect your section, going to affect my section, and it's just a great collaborative way of working, I find as well, and it also, without a doubt, protects our customers 100%.
yeah, that's great. That's great. So I guess we're gonna kind of look at some wrap up questions now,
Hmm.
just in terms of time. So you mentioned that you'll check out kind of maybe webinars or some of these online resources, but
Yeah.
how do you make sure you're up to date on the latest developments? Because obviously data protection it moves at a fast pace. It moves at a fast pace compared to some regulatory industries and just other industries in general.
Yeah. So at this moment in time, signed up to quite a few things. I think too much actually, if that's possible. So
Yeah.
I've signed up to like a regular couple of newsletters which I get on a weekly basis, which give me updates on regulatory standards, from key industry heads and leads, just to make sure I understand and update on new things that are coming out within the industry, whether it be FCA compliance or particularly data protection. Um, a law firm we work with, they put on regular key talks on GDPR sessions, so on a fortnightly basis to have a key update, on maybe cookie management. Last year was like a big thing about getting updating your cookie processes and policies, new GDPR rules. So I log into that on a fortnightly basis, and there'll be a guest speaker on the kind of subject involved, and get feedback from that way as well. Um, I attend annual training as well, so that, you can't just rest on your laurels that I've done training 1 year, I know everything on an annual basis. I'll make sure I go on different annual courses, not with the same company, different courses. Because if you go on the same one every single year, they're teaching the same things. If you go to a different company, you're kind of hopefully learning different bits of material, little bits and pieces, breadcrumbs from there. And I think lastly, because again we're a joint venture between Tesco stores and O2, I'm in a privileged position where I can talk with the DPO at Tesco stores or the DPO at O2. So we have quarterly catch-ups there as well. So I have a quarterly catch-up with with O2 DPO and the Tesco stores DPO. But because of obviously we have sensitive information, because of competition law rules, there's certain things I can't say to them about metrics and numbers. But we have like maybe just it's a call about key themes within industry, but we never kind of talk about numbers, obviously because of competition law as well.
But I'm sure you get some, different perspectives and insights on the kind of major themes, which is,
Yeah,
I'm sure, very valuable, actually.
because as you can imagine, like Tesco Mobile is with its telco company with the Tesco stores, there is massive conglomerate around, not just UK based, they're around Europe, they're around Asia and South America. So you kind of from DPL positions, it's also interesting to see the kind of key themes in South America and Asia, which I wouldn't think of. Like, it's quite interesting. I learned quite a lot from those sessions as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. So, this is an interesting one. It's a bit of a thinker. How do you think data protection and awareness of it is going to evolve at a company and a user level moving forward? This is a bit of a speculation question, so no worries. But
I'll give you I'll give you a speculative answer.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think data is the future of most, if not all, businesses. And if you're not clued up on that, I think you're missing the trick. Specifically within Tesco Mobile, we've set up a specific data analytics team. This department's been put in place to better understand our customer needs, and the main thing is basically making sure we understand the customer needs and how to better service them. So by the data we get on a monthly basis, you can see, at high end, what's the most popular iPhone, what's the most popular Samsung, what's the most popular like bundle of deals, and then from that we can hopefully tailor a better experience for our customers when they're coming to shop with us online, call us, or come into stores. And by doing that, when you understand your customer base a bit more, when you come to engage with them, you kind of almost have like a personalized shopping journey. So when I go into a store as Shaun Wilson, they can see from my history that I've done. I like iPhone, I like this smart bundle. So when I come and sit down in the store, they can give me a tailored journey to say, okay, Shaun, you sit down, what do you want to see? Here's the latest phone we think you might be interested in. Here's the date you might be interested in. And as a customer, I'm like, I feel valued because you know me, you understand what I want, you understand my needs. And I think by harnessing data in the right way, you can make a personalized journey for your customer when they come into your industry. Not just telcos, it could be retail, it could be somewhere like Next, it could be somewhere like anywhere else as well. If you look at data in the right way, handle it in the right way, it can become a great leverage to help with you and your customer base as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's the convenience aspect can be really, you can double down on that and you can provide the best customer journey.
Yeah.
But then obviously with that, there is the kind of other side of the coin where if you do these things, you have to make sure you're complying, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have the best of both there.
Yeah, it's making sure we have the up-to-date marketing consents and those consent pieces in place. Make sure you actually want to have that. It also makes sure the customer wants to have that journey as well. If you don't want it, you
Yeah,
don't want to be like overdoing it as well.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But generally, I agree with you. Generally, I think it will improve and does improve the experience of pretty much every industry, which is great.
Yeah, great.
So one last question for you, Shaun.
Go for it.
One last question. If you had to give one tip or one piece of advice to someone who's maybe coming into a compliance role, a data protection officer role, what would you say?
I think my tip would be don't assume that you're gonna go in and know everything straight away. I think for me it's about learning. As I think within this role, you can't know enough. You have to go in there with a mindset of like, I want to absorb all the knowledge I can, whether that be by attending courses, reading, talking to peers, talking to friends with industry as well. It's just making sure you have all the knowledge you can give, because I've been in situations, I've been in compliance for eight years, and I get questions regularly, or I got questioned maybe last month around FCA compliance issue, and I was like scratching my head. I said I did not know that. But it's just by upskilling yourself and by learning these questions. So it's just by making sure you're breathing in, taking in all knowledge you can, and just don't assume you will know everything, because you will never will. But just keep learning, keep going on that journey, and just ultimately just make you a better compliance officer going forward as well.
Yeah, that's true. I love this question because all the answers, I'm like, yeah, that is what I see in my, in my day-to-day work life, 100%. And I guess it ties in with the question that was about how do you stay up to date. You've got to utilize all these different sources. I've never asked someone that question and they've said, oh yeah, I get some newsletters and that's it. Never, because that's not sufficient. I don't think for this industry. I don't think it's enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're privileged to be in an industry which is, is thriving, but it's always evolving. It's never going to stay just as we are with GDPR, with compliance. It's always going to be new rules, new regulations coming out, and if you're not upskilling yourself, you're not learning, you're not taking no advantages to train yourself, you're going to fall behind very quickly.
Exactly. Well, this has been great, Shaun. Thank you for that final tip. We really appreciate you spending your time coming on here. It's been an interesting one.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So everyone else can check out the episodes of this podcast on the various streaming platforms. And once again, thank you, Shaun, for joining. It's been a great time.
Thank you very much.
Cool.